Hello everyone, my name is Ken Breen. I am an associate professor at the Faculty of Education at the University of New Brunswick in Fredericton, Canada, and I'm pleased to have been invited to speak on the topic of pupil-teacher relationship in a digital age. So I'm going to offer some comments and thoughts on that topic. I would like to begin with offering some foundational aspects of the pupil-teacher relationship regardless of the existence of technology. I think there are three of them that I'd like to highlight. The first one is that teachers are in a fiduciary relationship with students, parents, colleagues, administration, employers, and the community. This means that teachers hold a position of trust and authority with respect to their students. The second foundational point is that teachers owe a duty of care to their students to protect them from harm. The standard of care includes that of a careful parent and that of a reasonably competent professional. And the third foundational aspect of the pupil-teacher relationship is that teachers have an instructional relationship with students. This means that they are expected to provide the quality of instruction to their students that meets student needs, and prescribe curriculum outcomes set by their employers or the government. So let me speak first about this fiduciary relationship. Teachers are trusted by many stakeholders in education: students, parents, colleagues, administrators, employers, communities, to engage in their roles as teachers in a way that fulfills their professional responsibilities towards students. Students trust that their teachers are acting in the best interest of their learning. Parents trust that teachers are acting in the best interest of their children, both personal and academic. Teachers trust that their colleagues are fulfilling these responsibilities towards their students for whom they are shared responsibility and acting in ways that promote their shared professionalism. Administrators and employers trust that the teachers that they hire and assign to classes are fulfilling their roles, instructional and otherwise. The greater community trusts schools as a whole, and teachers in particular, to deliver instruction that is so important to the well-being of students and society as a whole. Now, with this trust, teachers also receive authority to carry out their roles. This includes the authority to set up their classrooms, plan instruction by choosing instructional resources and strategies, deliver lessons, maintain orderly learning environments, discipline students if needed, evaluate student achievement, and make other decisions that flow from their roles. So that's the basic explanation of the fiduciary relationship that teachers have with regard to students in particular and the other stakeholders as well. The second foundational aspect of the teacher-pupil relationship is the duty of care. Now, teachers have a common law duty of care for their students. Now, normally you think of this duty in relation to protecting students from physical harm while engaged in school activities. Activities in gyms or labs or vocational shops or on field trips are examples where teachers are expected to take actions to protect students from physical harm. More recently, however, there has been more attention placed on the duty to protect students from other types of harm that may occur in the school setting, such as physical and emotional harm from bullying or harassment by other students. In other words, our understanding of harm needs to be broadened beyond simple physical injury. The third foundational piece is the instructional relationship. Teachers have an instructional relationship with students. This requires them to provide quality instruction to their students, and students rely on their teacher to provide them with this instruction. Now, quality instruction can mean many things in the student-teacher relationship. Certainly, it requires teachers to have the necessary content knowledge of the assigned subject matter that they are teaching. Students need to be confident that they are receiving accurate and current instruction from their teachers. Quality instruction also requires that teachers have the necessary relevant pedagogical knowledge and skills to teach assigned classes. Clearly, the pedagogical skills needed to teach math, for example, to 5-year-old children in kindergarten differ from those required to teach math to senior secondary students. Similarly, teaching primary and secondary students requires different instructional skills compared to teaching college and university students. Now, quality instruction also requires the proper choices of instructional materials, resources, and activities that suit the needs of assigned students and meet the prescribed learning outcomes for the assigned class or course. So, with these three foundational aspects in mind, let's think about these principles and apply them to our current digital age and the implications of technology in schools and in society. And there are four areas that come to mind for consideration. One would be student-teacher communication via cell phones and social media. Secondly, teacher choice of technology for instruction. Third, responding to student complaints about cyberbullying. And fourth, teachers' public image and views as conveyed through social media. So let's begin with the question of student-teacher communication in the digital age. I see three areas where there's need for careful thought, consideration, and really attention to practice in this topic. One is the possibility for improper communications by teachers that breach this relationship of trust. The secondly is the possibility of harassment of teachers by students and their families through these digital communications. And third, I see risks associated with sharing confidential information obtained by teachers in the course of their duties. All right, so let's go back to this question of improper communication. Certainly, the use of a cell phone or social media that allows, well, particularly cell phones that allow direct teacher-to-student communication in a very private sort of way, certainly offers or opens up the possibility of improper communication. Now, in Canada, I've read several cases that have risen over teacher-student relationships that become improper, and the technology facilitates that improper communication. This could be a case where, say, a student makes contact with teachers for non-academic reasons, trying to become the teacher's friend, or alternatively, where the teacher does the same thing towards a student, and the communications are not related to instructional purposes, but they're related to creating a personal relationship, which would be improper when given the fact that teachers have this fiduciary role, and students are trusting teachers to not misuse that role. Now, the thing about cell phones is that provides the kind of direct personal communication, whether it's by phone or by texting, that's different from what might exist in the past, where you would have to, when people meet in person, or use a landline phone, or communicate by letter, that kind of thing. So the important thing I think to understand is that the technology itself is not the problem, but the technology can be a vehicle for improper communication. And therefore, it's important to have an understanding of it's important for a teacher to have an understanding of what their role is and what is not, and for students to understand what the proper role of a teacher is in the proper role of a teacher, the proper relationship with the teacher, and what would be proper communications. I'm going to offer at the end some thoughts regarding policies around that topic. But the main message I have is that technological tools, such as cell phones, can provide a vehicle for improper communication between teacher and student, and therefore those tools should not be used in that way. The second thing about teacher-student communications in the digital age is the possibility of harassment of teachers by students and their families. Now, a former student of mine began a study on this whole topic of harassment and cyberbullying of teachers by students. It's a difficult area because we live in a public age where people often go online to express their opinions, and those can include opinions of what teachers have done. So students may go on their social media accounts to complain about something their teacher has done or said. Parents might go online to complain about their students' teachers, their children's teachers, and what they've done or said. And that can lead to a lot of public criticism of schools and teachers, and that can be unfair. It can actually become quite inflammatory, and there have been cases where that's arisen. And it becomes difficult for teachers to know how to respond because the criticism becomes very public, and it's not clear what their options are to respond to that. So one area of policy would be for governments and employers to put boundaries on that kind that kind of communication, and also have consequences for communication that goes beyond that, beyond the proper channels and the proper communication of ideas. The third area of teacher-student communication that bears risk has to do with the sharing of confidential information obtained by teachers in the course of their duties. Now, teachers obtain a lot of information about their students. They may, of course, they'll have test data, test results, test data they receive for their own students or classes. They may have information about their students' past records. They may have information about the student's family background. That information in the past would have been on paper documents locked up in files. Now these things may be available electronically for ease of access, but it's really important to be careful about how that information is shared. Teachers can certainly share information between one another for the purposes of working with a student or helping a student with their progress. Teachers can share information with their administrators, and administrators can share information with teachers. But it's really important that information doesn't go beyond the proper people for whom that information is designed. That also means that when teachers are engaging in communications, say by email, that with, say, a colleague or with a parent or a student, that they're very careful not to inadvertently include in their communication information that's confidential related to another student or other students. So, for example, if a teacher is involved in a communication, say by email back and forth with a parent, and with regard to a student, it's important that they not copy that information to people who should not be having that communication. And it's very easy to accidentally say hit reply all when you enter your email, or accidentally attach a file that has confidential information in it. So it's really important to be very careful about that. Now, my one suggestion, I'll have it later, has to do with what you share via technology and when and where you use technology to do that communication. And one suggestion would be to not use email for lengthy conversations related to something important with students, but have those communications in person. So those are three areas where there's risk of harm with regard to student-teacher communication. One would be improper communication with a student to develop an improper personal relationship. The other would be the issue or harassment of teachers by students and their families. And the third would be the risk of sharing confidential information obtained by teachers in the course of their duties. A second area that I find interesting is the question of teacher choice of technology for instruction. Now, as I say, teachers have an instructional relationship with their students. This means that the students are trusting the teacher to provide quality instruction, and teachers are expected by their employers to provide quality instruction. And that may include the proper use of technology. There is a lot of technology that can support instruction. This means that teachers need to be open to trying new technology and gaining the necessary training to use it effectively. There's no good in having a technological tool available in a classroom or available to a teacher if it's not used or not used effectively. It just becomes a gadget in the classroom that may not be effective. The other thing, though, is that there's a need for teachers to be discerning about the instructional benefits of the latest technological gadget or tool that's being promoted by others, including educational technology companies. So on one hand, if there are technological tools that are available and have pedagogical benefit, it's important for teachers to be open to using them and to be open to receiving the training. Of course, the flip side of that is that the training needs to be provided by school administrators or employers to make sure that technology can be used effectively. But the other thing is, we shouldn't be latching on to the latest technological tool just because it's something that's new and shiny. Teachers need to be discerning about whether the technology being offered is actually going to produce the pedagogical benefit that's intended. The technology is a tool for learning. It's not the object of the learning, except perhaps in a computer science class you're going to learn about a particular thing. But there's no point in having, say, a fancy projector or a smart board or some kind of a software program, and to use it just for the sake of using that technology if there's no pedagogical benefit that goes with that particular piece of technology. And then the third thing, and this is something I've come across more recently, is the question of the possible ethical questions around conflict of interest with regard to whether teachers may be promoting a particular technology brand or technology device over others, particularly if they have some kind of encouragement by the company to use it. So, for example, I've read about places where teachers are invited by a tech company, so it could be Google or Apple or Amazon or Microsoft. They're offered some technological tool to use with their classroom and offered with benefits, pedagogical benefits attached. But then you wonder, okay, first of all, has that discernment occurred with regard to whether this technology has pedagogical benefit? But are teachers inadvertently promoting that brand over other brands and using the fact that they have their captive audience, their students, hearing about you, the teacher, hearing from you, the teacher, about this particular technological tool? So it's easy, for example, if teachers are say, using Apple products like iPads or iMacs or iBooks, that kind of thing, to inadvertently convey to students that that's a superior brand over whatever other brands may exist on the market. And so it's important that teachers be careful about not making selection decisions around technology based on some personal benefit they might gain. So, for example, if Microsoft, for example, gives teachers some kind of free, some kind of compensation or free access to technology or free access to a conference, that kind of thing, in exchange for using the products, that can lead to a conflict of interest, and that could be an ethical problem if the technology being used in a way that makes it appear that the teacher is promoting the brand through the use of it in their classroom. So that's an area that I think is a newer one. I mean, teachers using branded products is not a new thing, but because there's a lot of money involved related to technology products, that could be something that we need to be careful about. Now, a third area in the teacher-student relationship related technology has to do with cyberbullying. And I'm referring here to the fact that teachers need to be responsive to student complaints about being victims of cyberbullying. Remember, I said that teachers have a duty of care to their students, and that means not just physical harm, but any kind of emotional harm that may arise from bullying. So that means that teachers need to deal compassionately with students when they come forward with complaints that other students, for example, have been bullying them or harassing them via technology. Teachers need to be able to listen carefully to what the students are saying, what the concern is, and offer the help that can be provided. The other thing that teachers need to be able to do is support policies that discourage a particular type of cyberbullying, which is the distribution of intimate images among students without permission. Now, in Canada, there are actually laws about that, but certainly, to the extent teachers have influence, it's important for teachers to support policies around discouraging that type of thing, distributing intimate images or distributing any other types of content that can be seen as harassment or bullying of other students. It's also important to teach students proactively about the risks associated with living their lives in a digital world, and to teach them how to protect themselves and their privacy. Now, it certainly seems that younger generations are used to living their lives publicly, posting content all the time on their social media accounts, with pictures of themselves, at all kinds of times when they're involved in playing a sport or going to a party or at an event. Younger generations seem to like to do that, but that's fine up to a point. But students have to understand that there are risks associated with posting content, and part of the role of teachers in that trusted role is to tell students that there are risks associated with this type of thing, and here's how to protect themselves, and to provide private, talk about privacy settings, but also maybe getting students to think a little bit about being careful about how much of their personal lives they publish online. The other thing, though, the teachers and schools have to recognize is there are limits of their authority in matters related to cyberbullying. In some cases, it's very difficult for teachers and schools to police behavior that occurs off school property. And so certainly in the digital age where cell phones can go on school property, off school property, and harassing content can be published via cell phones, teachers have to be realistic about what they can do to prevent that kind of thing and what they can do in terms of responding to harassment. So they need to be able to explain that to students that there are limits to what we can do, but at the same time, I propose that there be policies that schools can enact that give them more latitude with regard to how to respond to that kind of thing. I don't think it's all necessarily about more punishment for those who engage in cyberbullying, but it's about teaching students how to communicate properly and effectively and fairly and reasonably with their peers in a way that would not be harassment or not be hurtful. Another area that's interesting with regard to the pupil-student relationship has to do with the teacher's public image and views conveyed via social media. Now, as I said earlier, teachers have this fiduciary role, which means they're held to a higher standard in society due to their position as role models for students. That means that images that are posted by teachers or images that depict teachers in ways that might reflect negatively on them as role models may draw scrutiny or criticism from the public and from parents and from their employers. Similarly, teachers may also post controversial opinions or statements on social media, and this too may draw public scrutiny and criticism if these posts cause concern about their effect on students and on the position of trust that they have, particularly if there's concern that these views are being shared in a classroom where students are often a captive audience. Now, it's also important to understand and remember that teachers are still members of society and therefore entitled to the same democratic rights as other citizens, although subject to some reasonable limitations that may be applied by their employers or the government. Now, let me offer now some suggestions with regard to practice and policies. The first one is for teachers, and that is teachers should treat any communication with students, parents, colleagues, or others related to their employment as if it's public. A rule of thumb for teachers is that you should not say anything in a text message or an email or a telephone call or any other form that you would not say directly to the person or not post on a public bulletin board. I mean a physical public bulletin board. If you are saying something that you would not want to be posted publicly on a bulletin board, don't say it through technology just because technology lets you do that. Because that increases the risk of doing or saying something that's improper or hurtful or unprofessional. As I said earlier, if you're engaged, for example, in an email exchange with a parent, if the exchange is such that it'd be better to speak to that parent in person, then do that. Say, look, let's have a meeting or have a phone call and have this conversation in person, so that we can air this out properly, rather than the risk of back and forth email exchange, which then could become public and therefore could be harmful to all involved. So that's the first rule of thumb. Don't say anything via technology that you wouldn't say directly to a person in front of you or post on a physical bulletin board. The second thing is that teachers need to keep firm boundaries between themselves and their students in their communications or interactions through any form of technology. Teachers shouldn't be friends with students, and I mean friends in the normal sense of the word, but that also includes not being social media friends, and I'm using friends in the Facebook sense of the meaning. Teachers have an instructional role with their students, instructional relationship, a fiduciary relationship, a relationship of trust and authority, but they're not peers, they're not friends with students. So therefore, any communications with students should be on that basis. The communication should be respectful, it could be friendly, it could be kind, compassionate, but you are not the student's friends. So therefore, don't use technology as a way to engage in conversations that, again, would not be ones you would use in person or in front of public. Now, I will say that various Canadian teacher associations have actually offered guidance to teachers on the use of social media and electronic communications. A notable one is published by the Ontario College of Teachers. So if you go to www.oct.ca and click on Professional Advisory, you'll see one on that topic. And it provides a series of instructions and advice and principles around that type of thing, including this rule of thumb about don't post something or don't say something through a technology that you wouldn't post on a public bulletin board. Now the third thing is, or the fourth thing, is that on the point about teachers' views posted publicly, it's important to realize that teachers do have the right to hold and express controversial views as an important part of modeling democracy for students. Teachers should not be immune from criticism, and they should be prepared to back up controversial views with reasoned principled arguments. But unreasonable scrutiny or unreasonable regulation of teacher views is not compatible with promoting a free society and the values of learning and inquiry. The next thing is the question of technology choices. Now, as I said before, it's important that technology choices be guided by pedagogical value and be supported by appropriate professional development. Care must be taken to avoid conflicts of interest that can arise for teachers and schools involving these type of products. So there should be policies around the use of technology. That includes both the choices of technology, who's choosing them, on what basis. There should be policies around providing appropriate professional development so these devices can be used properly. And it's important to keep teachers to avoid the appearance of conflict of interest in these choices. The other thing is there need to be policies that protect students and teachers from cyberbullying. And these policies need to be designed to be effective in preventing harm or addressing harm and tailored so that they focus on the connection between members of the school community rather than the time and place that the bullying may have occurred. So traditionally, schools can discipline other students for conduct that occurs during the school day or during school activities. And there was kind of a boundary. If it happened to school, the school's involved. If it happened away from school, the school's not involved. But we know that the technology blurs the lines between school and home or school and community. And so the more important feature is whether there is a connection between the bullying conduct, and the school or members of the school community. So in other words, it's less important whether student A bullied student B and student A sent the offending text message or social media post away from school. What matters is more the effect on the school. So it's important that the policies be tailored to address the harm and to address the harm and, if possible, prevent the harm, but more realistically, address the harm based on the nature of the relationship and nature of the interaction, not on the specific geographical location of the offending tweet or social media post and so on. So with that, I would like to conclude this message. Technology is a growing area. There's always going to be new technology. That's not a new thing. There's a new technology in education ever since school started. I imagine chalkboards were a new technology back when they first started. The important thing is to focus on these foundational principles. Teachers have a fiduciary relationship. Teachers owe a duty of care to students, and teachers have an instructional relationship. So quality instruction, treating students with dignity and respect, protecting them from harm, acting in a way that doesn't violate that trust. Those are foundational principles that apply regardless of the technology that we have in our schools. So thank you for listening, and best wishes to you all.